So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Achieving the Zero Waste Vision workshop, Advancing Public-Private Partnerships for Waste to Energy and Other Disposal Practices. Thank you for joining us. This workshop is organized by UNDP Montreal Protocol Chemicals and Waste Unit. My name is He Xin. I'm the program analyst of the Montreal Protocol Chemicals and Waste Unit of UNDP. So before we kick off the meeting, there is some information I would like to share with you. Please note that this workshop is recorded. So if you have questions for the panelists, please leave them in the Q&A box. You can find that down below your screen. Please also follow us on Spark Blue, where you will find the presentation and recording of this meeting shortly after. This is how you can find us. Just scan the QR code. You will find the page about our event. You can also raise questions or leave a message there, and we will make sure that your answers or concerns to be addressed. Now I would like to introduce our moderator today, Mr. Etienne Gonan. Etienne is a sustainable cooling, chemicals, and waste management technical specialist of the Montreal Protocol Chemicals and Waste Unit under the Nature, Climate, and Energy team of UNDP. Etienne has many years of experience in supporting countries in Africa and other regions to develop and implement projects and initiatives related to sustainable cooling and to achieving zero waste. Etienne, may I pass the floor to you?
Thank you very much, Tin. And greetings to everyone. Good morning, good evening, if it's later in your part of the world. Thank you very much. Welcome to this webinar, where we'll be talking about municipal solid waste in the context of Asia Pacific. As we know, it's a global problem of massive impact with comprehensive including beyond the visible pollution, just to name, for example, climate change, and to address the issues related to municipal solid waste. UNDP has been promoting a long-term vision that complies and fits well with the new strategic plan of UNDP, which is a zero waste approach. So tools are necessary to implement such a vision, and one needs tools that are both effective and adapted to the region. And today we will hear specifically about solutions and implementable ones to address specific issues. One of such tools that has been tested effectively in the promotion of circular economy solutions to the waste challenges. One such tool is our public-private partnerships, which can be particularly adapted solutions to particular waste problem. So you will hear practical solutions and underground examples. You will be able to raise questions and follow up with our panelists about this approach. As our program is quite packed, I will present each of the speakers as they start their presentation, and then we will have a panel discussion at the end of it. So without further ado, I am pleased to ask Mr. Jaco Siliers, manager of the Bangkok Regional Hub, to give the opening remark. Jaco has also held other UN posts, including previously the UNDP country director post in India. Jaco, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Etienne. And let me first of all just say how wonderful it is to have so many colleagues and participants in this event. It is an important and growingly important area for not only UNDP, but I think also for governments and countries in our region to address our waste management in a constructive and very efficient way, but also to find solutions, because clearly, as we see also with the continued waste challenges that we face in many of our countries, it is currently not effectively addressed. And I think that's what this workshop and this conference is about, how to bring in new partners, both from the public sector and private sector, but also get people to come up with joint solutions. And I think that's a challenge here. What we faced here is that many people are trying to work in this space. They're all not always well coordinated and work in different parts, very important activities. That does wonderful work. But if it doesn't come together in a holistic perspective and approach, then it will never be effective. And I think what we see around the waste management for us is that you need to get the people who are not like-minded. They think differently about how to solve the problem. Meaning some might be working in downstream in collection areas and recycling areas. Others might be working on legislation and policy issues. Others might be working from the private sector and working with the responsible or primarily the companies that are generating a lot of the waste. But if they don't come together and they don't talk to each other, then we will never have the solution. And it's also not only people who are not like-minded, but also not like-situated. So how to engage people from academia, from government, from private sector, from community-based groups is really strategic. So it's an important topic, and we see that a large amount of waste is also being produced worldwide, but specifically in the Asia-Pacific region, this is an added challenge because we also have a significant large population, and how we work specifically on a life cycle approach that is not linear or that looks at incorporating a number of solutions will be important. And we look forward to hear from many colleagues on the session today. We've also seen that plastic pollution was identified for many years as a very important area, and because it's so visible and you can see it, whether it's in the oceans, the water, or everywhere where we live, it is obviously a very important area, but we actually see that the majority of waste produced in the Asia-Pacific region is actually organic, an average of 50% of total generation. And plastic constitutes a special part of that, but because it is such durable and it's so difficult often to clean up. But that's one part of an important ecosystem that we need to address. We also see that improved waste management and recycling to reduce pollution, reduce resources is really essential. Although ultimately, obviously, we should work towards the generation to avoid the generation of waste. We still see that recycling is undoubtedly a very important component within the Asia-Pacific context. I think some of the examples we will hear from during this next session is really how to do that in an effective way, that we can also transition to a cleaner energy production sources, both at the policy level and the regulatory levels, but also in terms of cleaning up some of the waste that needs to be done. But what we are really seeing at UNDP is that more and more countries are embracing the concept of zero waste, of looking across a circular approach that compromises not just reuse and recycling of products and materials, but also looks at responsible design, production and consumption of goods that ultimately contributes to the goal of minimizing waste generation. And I think what we're seeing, if these are not balanced and if we don't move towards that as a more bigger emphasis, we will never really be able to clean up all the waste that we're generating. So it is not an either or discussion that we're having here today, it is an and with. And I think that is the important part, that we're looking at and solutions with solutions to really create a zero waste approach as we move forward. And I think for us in UNDP, we also see more and more emphasis on public-private partnerships, how governments also collaborate with private sector. Is going to be crucial from where we're sitting a little bit at a unique position as a multilateral organization. We see a massive amount of distrust between the dialogue and the efforts of governments and private sector. And I think that's why it's so important to look at these PPP, these public-private partnerships, as a way of strengthening opportunities, that we can really look at a number of areas that look at waste incineration, waste treatment, recycling, and waste to energy opportunities as well. And I guess today we'll also hear a lot about that. So through the zero waste offer, UNDP is really ambitious to introduce a zero waste vision. We have developed 50 countries where we want to do this. What we're talking about here today is a part of that. We want to look at sustainable waste management in cities specifically, and also how to finance some of these opportunities and bringing in some of the new financing mechanism to also look at addressing some of these solutions. So UNDP really works, as you know, with governments to integrate the circular economy principles and priorities. but we also want to do this in national planning and budgeting. And I think the unique opportunities here is how do we bring in then the private sector, how do we bring in community efforts, and how do we also connect some of these very, very important activities, also at a vertical horizon, from community level to city or state levels to national levels, and obviously globally through some of these policies and procedures that we're trying to put in place at a global level, not only through the UN, but also through many other efforts. So I think this whole of society approach to address not only waste but plastic pollution, and a systems approach to how do we think around these as a full ecosystem that affects our climate solutions, but requires us to really transform and act together in different ways, is what we're trying to unlock here. So we hope to hear from the examples. I think what we see in many of these workshops is that people learn faster and quicker when they see certain things working. Obviously, there's a context-specific area, and every country and every community and every effort is different and has to be based on the context. But once we start to learn and improve, the quicker we learn from good examples, the better it will also be to generate solutions that will really look at a systems approach. And that's what we hope to hear today. So let me end here, Etienne. Once again, just to say thank you to a lot of the participants here in the room. You are the future of the solutions we're looking to collaborate with. And we also are looking for opportunities to link what you're doing across the various both sectoral areas, but also I think from companies to governments to civil society. So thanks again, and we look forward to a really solution-driven discussion here today. Back to you, Etienne.
Thank you so much, Jaco, for highlighting these multiple dimensions of the solution underlying the Zero Waste Initiative and addressing the trust issue between the public and private sector and the system approach. So thank you so much. We will start by a series of four presentations. And the first one will be by Xiaofang Zhu, that will present the Zero Waste Initiative briefly, so that we are all aware of this framework. And then we will move to Mr. Weiner Winquist, that will present an example from Europe, and particularly from Sweden. Then we will move to India with Ms. Saloni Goel, that will present the Zero Waste Vision in India. And then we'll have Mr. Troy Tian, that will present lessons learned in the implementation of public-private partnership for waste management projects. So let's start right away with Xiaofang, and she will present the Zero Waste Vision and Initiative. Thank you, Xiaofang. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Etienne. Can you hear me?
Yes, okay. Please.
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues and friends from the world, all of the participants. Welcome to join this UNDP webinar. And I also want to thank the opening remark from Jaco, the hub manager of UNDP in Asia Pacific. I think he did a very good, already have very good, you share very good insight and indicate all of the objectives and our UNDP's views on this waste management. I think it will save my time. I really want to see similar things, he just mentioned. So UNDP developed this zero waste offer in line with our objective of the strategic plan in the future 4 years for achieving the SDGs. I want to move my slide. Can you see that? Because this is the waste is a priority issue we identified. Many countries are facing, and there is a huge challenge from developing world. And you can see that according to some assessment by the World Bank and other UN organizations, more than 2 billion people without access to the basic waste service like the waste collection, and more than 3 billion without access to the controlled waste recovery and also the disposal. So, and the whole world still generate about 2 billion tons of the waste And this will continue to grow till the 2050, about 70% of the growth. And at least just 1/3 of the waste generated in current was mismanaged and basically like open burning or open dumping without controlled treatment that damage our environment. And we mentioned about the plastic, still a significant challenge to us to address and find a solution. And also this related to the climate change. And as you can see, the IPCC evaluation report, and 5% of the total emission come from this waste sector. So we want to show you maybe status of the waste management in different regions. And this zero waste idea started from the EU. Some EU countries, they started to look at how to reduce the landfill from 20 years ago, and they made significant progress in this area. Until now, EU already reduced their landfill to the 24%, and some countries already achieved the kind of the concept of zero waste. The landfill is below 1%. And if you look at the US, they are still have 50% of the waste landfilling, but they are in recent years, many cities of US are moving to this direction, and you can see some announcement from many cities of US. And in the Asia, Japan is quite advanced, in the waste management. Most of the waste was, many of the plastic was recycled, and waste was well managed, in the country. And China moved quickly and from the landfill to other ways to managing the waste and they reduce those landfill. They established, 300 plus, I think maybe more than 400 waste to energy facility. And they demonstrate some zero waste city 3 years ago and promote to more than 100 cities, from this year. So that's quite a quick movement. But look at other regions, and many regions like Africa, South Asia are still behind in the waste management, and a significant part of waste was not well treated. So this is a huge issue and need to be addressed urgently. So this zero waste vision, is kind of, as Jaco mentioned, it's not only about waste treatment, it's not only about waste. The circular economy is in the heart of this vision. So we are trying to achieve a transformation from linear economy to circular economy. So there will be the change of the business model, change of the behaviors, attitudes of those business towards the circularity. But this will not be achieved only by whatever the public sector or private sector. There must be coordinated action from public and private together. So we want to, this workshop objective to try to facilitate those cooperation between the public and private, but also, introduce some very, some ideas, how to address this, how to make it happen. And our final objective of this approach is to decouple the economic growth from the waste generation. The most important thing is in this region is we follow the waste hierarchy and we prioritize the prevention activity to avoid and reduce the waste generation. Then we try to reuse and recover those material from the waste stream, as much as possible, and reduce the landfill, as much as possible, and below the 1%, equal to 0. So this is kind of the concept of the zero waste vision, and you can find it, maybe more information in our waste offer. So we identified 5 pillars in this approach. We call it a service line. So this is something UNDP try to support the country, maybe in this aspect, what kind of activity is needed. And I will have a very brief introduction. And the first service in line is about the planning and governance. And we all know this waste management is a service of the municipality and cities. So government must, take the lead on the waste management. So we are trying to support those cities to build an infrastructure for the recycling, for the waste to energy, or other ways to manage those waste from waste to resource. And then, but also, maybe for many cities, we need to start from the data collection, from analyze, assessment, and maybe develop those strategy or review those strategy towards zero waste region. Because we believe that at this moment, most of the developing countries still do not have this kind of strategy, ready or being assessed. So this is regarding to the city level planning. And the second would be something technical assistance from UNDP. We try to establish a platform for the technical assistance. We call it Clearinghouse. And we have partnered with Sweden Waste Association and other international associations, try to provide, those kind of advice or knowledge management or exchange of knowledge on policy and other best practice in this area to build the capacity on waste management. And the third would be about the financial instrument. We think this is in the core of the solution, and we must find a solution how to recover those costs, how to pay for those, how to finance those infrastructure, and how to apply the extended producer responsibility in the business, and to give the incentive to the firms and to the publics to reduce the waste generation. So those kind of also maybe other tools like the tax credit or incentive on the circular business should be considered and developed. So there are many good practices in this instrument, and we will hear from other speakers, I think, in this workshop. I mentioned about that, we are not only about the waste treatment, but rather than, promote the sustainable production and consumption to reduce the waste generation and build those business model and convert those waste to resource. So the circular economy approach is really important and a critical part of this zero waste approach. So we really want to promote those green design and design out the waste from the source, and also build the value chain based on the life cycle management. And in the beginning, we also need to think about those hazardous waste. We need to separate those hazardous waste from other waste, and we want to promote the green chemistry principle and eliminate all of those hazardous chemicals from the products. This is also not, it's a compact, system, and we may need some eco-label system, certification system, and supply chain management. And the last, I think, pillar would be the training, education in the waste sector is important because so many informal workers, and I think we will support the government to formalize those waste sector and provide, the decent job for the waste workers and improve the environment. So I think for UNDP, it's not only introduce a concept. UNDP really want to support the country to mobilize partnership mobilize resource to address those challenges like the finance challenge, infrastructure challenge, and the technical challenge. So in our zero waste offer, we have three main initiatives. One is clearinghouse, I already mentioned. Another is we want to set up a zero waste enabling facility. Is trying to support those waste planning, those data collection, those basic, enabling to build up those enabling environment for the waste management. And partnership is also important. It's public-private partnership and also partnership with finance institutions and municipalities. So there are many innovative finance tools and instruments we can use. So this is some area UNDP try to step in and help the cities. So why UNDP? So many people know UNDP. I think because we have presence in all of the developing countries, we have the experience, to develop really the context-specific solutions. Working with partners, with government and stakeholders, and coordinate and bring those investors or bring the partnership in the country. So, and because this waste also linked to climate change, linked to other vertical funds, the focal area. So UNDP also have this strengths to bring those to develop those programming for those donors, and this could be helpful to support city to address some kind of challenges. And we have other innovation labs, and we also work from innovative solutions, technical solutions, financial solutions. Those platforms UNDP already have could be useful to address the waste challenge. So we have also already quite a good portfolio working in this area. I will not introduce in detail, and we have new publication transitioning to a circular economy through the chemical waste management. You can maybe look at all of those information is much relevant, and we have the portfolio globally in about 80 countries. And regarding the plastic, and we have an ocean team also working in this area. We have a policy database. We also have some demonstration project in some countries. We call it the UNDP Ocean Innovative Challenge. That's a program. You may also could look at that program. And we have UNDP also established a plastic task force, and we have support from, we have the small grant program support communities activity. I think in the waste management, but also in the plastic. So this is kind of information you maybe feel helpful. But UNDP also developed local actions that could support also the waste management. So this is kind of what we are doing now. But I think this is not all of the activity UNDP is doing on the waste management. We also have other units like the crisis bureau and other units are doing this waste management. So we are trying to bring all of the UNDP capacity to support the country. So this is a kind of just start, and this is a huge challenge. I think we just want to come together and bring the partnership to support the country with progress towards this zero waste. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chao Fang. I just remind that you're the Director of Montreal Protocol Unit, Chemicals and Waste. Thank you for putting the framework in place to explain how this has been developed to respond to the huge challenge of solid waste management. We will now move to an experience. You mentioned the experience from Europe, and we will hear about this in our second presentation from Mr. Weine Wikvist, who is Senior Advisor for Afval Sverige, a Swedish Waste Management Association that has a memorandum of understanding with UNDP, and hearing about achieving a zero waste vision in the context of Europe. Weine, apart from his current position, has also been leading Afval Sverige. He has been teaching in various universities in Sweden, and he has practical experience in waste treatment, both at waste-to-energy plants and methane capture operations, for example. Weine, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning, good night to some of you. And I'm very honored to be invited to this seminar. I hope you can see my screen and you can hear me. And I'm going to talk about how to do the right thing right a little bit. First, a few words about what is Afval Sverige. And this is a Swedish waste management association, primarily for the public sector. We are composing all the municipalities in Sweden, but we also have quite a large number of private companies as associated members as well. And we have, since now almost 10 years, we have a zero waste vision. And this zero waste vision is extremely ambitious, actually, because then we are talking about no waste being generated at all. So everything is supposed to be reused or so. And of course, that will not be possible, but it is a direction, I would say, anyway. So we have already talked about the huge problem with the actual waste management situation around the globe, with a lot of landfill, open burning, resources not being used, and great climate impact. We all know from recent research that almost 50% of all the climate impact comes from the resource and material use. So of course, this problem is very important to solve. And we also know that concerning the SDGs, when we think about it, more than, I would say, 7 or 8 of the 17 SDGs are related to waste management in one way or the other. It is not only about resources, number 12, but also such things as good health, energy, life below water, and so on. So it's really interlinks to a lot of the SDGs. When we look to the present situation with respect to waste management in Europe, of course, the situation varies quite a lot from one country to another. And this graph shows how much of the municipal waste is being landfilled. And that is the red bar, the yellow one are the waste-to-energy bars, and the green ones are the recycling bars. And probably you cannot read the text of the countries, but Sweden is far left, being the country having the least landfill, less than 1% actually. And however, I want to stress already at this time that statistics is a large problem, because we all measure what is being recycled or what is being incinerated and so forth very differently, also in Europe up till now, and also, of course, around the globe. So comparing statistics is a huge difficulty, I would say, but it gives an impression anyway. So as you can see, there are many countries still struggling with a lot of landfilling. And at this moment, I used to also stress the situation about not comparing only percentage, but also comparing real tonnage. So of course, if you look into the graph, you can see France, for example, in this situation. the country of France have 20% landfill, and of course the tonnage of that landfill is quite large compared to the Malta or Cyprus, for example. So you also have to think about the tonnage, not only about the percentage. Of course, the Swedish journey to this very small landfill situation didn't happen over one night. In fact, it took many years, almost 20 years to achieve this. There were quite a few, I would say, very important steering instruments established through this journey. And I would stress, for example, the municipal waste planning that was introduced already in the beginning of the 90s. And then we introduced the producer responsibility. I will come back to that later on. And then, of course, the landfill tax and the landfill ban on combustible waste and then on organic waste. And therefore, you have this gradually diversion of waste from landfill. Of course, we are working in Sweden and in Europe according to the waste hierarchy, which probably all are familiar with. And this shows a stair. And of course, it's like a symbol. You should clean the stair from the top. So you start with reduce and reuse and so on, which you all know about probably. I think you should be, you all know that Sweden is part of the European Union, and the European Union is very active when it comes to waste management issue. And just a few years ago, it was introduced a new directive with ambitious target when it comes to recycling, as you can see on this chart. But not only a target, but also how things should be carried out. For example, there is a mandatory rule for separate collection of food waste and textiles by 2024. And here again, you can see it should be measured, these recycling targets, as real recycling, because up to now, and in the previous chart I show you, things are being measured as being collected. So, for example, if you collect the plastic, that target has been related to what is collected, but in reality, more than 60% of the plastic being collected cannot be recycled. So the real recycling is much lower. And we can see that now when we prepare the first statistics for last year. And then, of course, very important that landfill should be maximum in Europe as a whole to 10% by 2030. And that will be a large challenge for many countries, of course. Which are the most elements in order to come to this situation and to control and to solve the issues? I think there are four basic elements. One is, of course, to identify what is the true responsibility for different partners. Flow control is essential, because if you don't have control of where waste is going, it will be very difficult to have somebody, for example, to invest in a new treatment facility if they don't know if the waste will be coming there. And of course, financials is important. And then we are not talking about not only the investment, but also the running cost for many, many years, maintenance cost and so on. And last but not least, enforcement. Because we want to avoid, cherry picking, illegal dumping, and so on. And that is very important. And we all know that the waste management sector, unfortunately, around the globe is related to a lot of criminals. So enforcement is very, very critical, I would say. When we talk about legal responsibility at the European level and in Sweden, it follows the quite normal situation that municipalities, they are responsible for household waste, municipal waste, and also including waste paper. And then we have a number of so-called producer responsibility systems for packaging waste, electronic waste, and so forth. And for the rest of the waste, the waste generator will be responsible. But this is, of course, one of the critical things to identify and to follow as well. When we then talk about the actual waste management system itself, most of the time we talk about what should happen in the end of the line, so to say, when it comes to disposal, recovery. But in reality, we used to divide the waste management system into 4 elements. We are talking about planning, administration. We are talking about collection, sorting, and then finally recovery, disposal. And of course, there are many, many different ways in order to achieve these elements, for sure. And this chart only shows you an idea and how these different systems, elements, the 4 I talked about, can be operational. Of course, you can choose to have an in-house operation, but you can also have an in-house operation, but outsource the ownership, or vice versa, or you can have the whole thing, outsource both the ownership and the operation, and then we come to the PPP solutions, for example. And obviously, this can be different also when it comes to different parts, whether we talk about the planning, the collection, or the recovery situation. We also talk about a little bit about the private sector contribution. And let me just tell you that, of course, there are many parts of the system, or the waste management system, where the private sector come in. Also, when we are talking about the municipal waste management, for example, producing and administrative system, consulting service, technology supplier, maintenance, construction, operation, financial, and last but not least, to create markets for material and energy recovery. Because on the local level, you cannot have your own paper factory or your own plastic factory in all municipalities. But we will have to consider the whole time that municipalities is always in charge, because sometimes things will fail. The operation will not work as it was planned for one reason or the other. And for sure, the person to be blamed will be the mayor in the city or the government. So we can use different kind of private partners as help, so to say, but in the end of the day, municipality will be in charge. And that, of course, is therefore, this is also a very important political issue, not only on the country level, but on the local, municipal, city, or regional level as well. Another experience that we have concluded on the European level, and as well also in Sweden, of course, that in order to achieve a good recycling and good material quality, separate collection at source is the key, because once you have mixed things, it will be very difficult to sort out good things out of the bad things that comes for itself, of course. But we have seen over the past 20 years in Europe that different kind of mechanical sorting is difficult, and therefore separate collection, as long as it is possible, should be encouraged. And of course, one size doesn't fit all, so situation is different in different countries, but also within a country. Obviously, we have large cities, also in Sweden, but we have countryside and we have smaller cities and so on. And the system have to be applied to this in a different way, of course. And one important issue as well is that municipalities should be encouraged to cooperate with each other in order to merge also small municipalities together. Then you can have larger entities. Now I will go into just a few examples of recycling and recovery that could be interesting also to hear about. One such is the interest for deposit fee system, which had been raised the last years actually, for many reasons. One reason is, of course, that when you have a deposit fee system, you can achieve very clean material quality. And this example is from Sweden, where we have this deposit fee system for aluminum cans, for PET bottles, and for standard glass bottles, and for containing soft drinks and beers, for example. And now it's being extended also to other kind of containers that can go into this system. And here we have a recycling rates about 90% and very, very good quality, which can be used in the circle. We talk a lot about energy recovery, of course, and just to give you an overview, this is about anaerobic digestion. I think Mr. Jaco Sillers told you in the beginning that, for example, in Asia situation, and that is true also in many other parts of the world, more than 50% of the waste is being organic. So, and of course, then you can compost waste, but I would say even better would be to have an anaerobic digestion, because then you can also produce energy such as biogas, which can be compressed or also liquidized, and then it can be used for electricity generation, vehicle fuel, and it will replace then fossil fuel, which is very important those days, of course. But the biogas production will also end up with a biofertilizer, which can be used as soil improvement and as also replacing phosphorus for fertilizing. And that is also a very important resource conservation activity. We also have this quite new biochar process, which is limited, I would say, to sorted bio-waste. But that is also interesting because this biochar will be very effective as a fertilizer. And this is something that could be interesting also in cities and towns. And for example, the city of Stockholm is really a front runner in this case. And then, of course, we have the energy recovery through combustion, large combustion plants. We will talk about that later on, where we can use the heat for district heating, cooling, steam, electricity, aggregates for construction, and metal recycling as well. I'm trying to end up my presentation, and we wanted, as we heard earlier, to go to the circular economy from the linear economy. And in order to come there, I think we have to pass through the recycling economy. And in order to be correct, I think that right now we are somewhere between the linear economy and the recycling economy. We have not started in the circular economy in reality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rainer, for your very inspiring presentation. It's always good to see, in particular, the Swedish journey on reducing the quantity of the share of the waste that is disposed in the landfill. It's a good example for other countries to follow, for example. We will now move to an example from Asia and some lessons from Asia, and particularly from India, with the next presentation with our colleague Ms. Saloni Goel, who is head of circular economy and plastic waste management at UNDP country office in India. She has worked also previously on various aspects of waste management, marine litter, sanitation, and as climate change specialist, including at UNEP as well as UNDP. She will present on achieving zero waste vision in India. Please, Saloni, the floor is yours. And
thank you.
Rainer, maybe you can mute your micro. Thank you. Please, Saloni.
Etienne, thank you so much. And thank you to my earlier speakers. I think the stage has been set beautifully. Okay, I'd like to share my screen, and I'd just like to check if I'm audible.
We can hear you well.
So I'm sharing the screen. I hope the screen is visible.
Yes, please.
Thank you. So today I'd like to talk about UNDP India's work on plastic waste management within the larger umbrella of circular economy. So this is, so we look at plastic waste management and dry waste management from a sustainable and inclusion plastic waste management lens, I would say. And what I have displayed out here is a roof art that we have installed using 16,000 used PET bottles. This roof art has been installed at a material recovery facility in close vicinity to the Delhi International Airport. So if any of you plans to visit Delhi anytime in the near future, we'd welcome you to visit that facility. That facility has been established in partnership with the South Delhi Municipal Corporation, which is the urban local body for that area. And it has been set up with the donor contribution of the HDFC Bank Limited. So this which actually kind of sets the stage for what I'm going to share with you today. Also, just to go back, you can see this roof art talks about we've tried to depict recycling, we've tried to depict the inclusive aspect of our work, but also we tried to capture the 17 goals of the Sustainable Development Goals, because we understand that our work is directly impacting 14 out of the 17 SDGs. So just a quick view of the plastic waste management program here at UNDP. It's been in operation for the last 4 years. We are working in partnership with corporates like the Hindustan Coca-Cola Beverages, Hindustan Unilever Limited, Coca-Cola India Foundation, the HDFC Bank, as I just mentioned, and through other partners through the India SDG Trust. We have a footprint across 35 cities in the country, and we have till date processed more than 85,000 metric tons of plastic waste, which is equivalent to about 200,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide emissions avoided, and equivalent to planting almost 10 million trees across the country. Through this program, we have enabled institutionalization and capacitation of more than 5,000 waste pickers. As you can see in this map of India, we are present across the geography of India, north, south, east, and west regions. So broadly, the UNDP program on plastic waste management works on 5 pillars: creation of physical infrastructure, partnerships, social inclusion, outreach, innovation, and digitization. I'll quickly run you through these, the broad frameworks of these pillars, I would say. So physical infrastructure, we typically work on a piece of land that is allotted to us by the urban local body. In some cases, the urban local body has also contributed by establishing a building or a shed. UNDP establishes provides the machinery. And in this facility that I have displayed is the same facility which I had shown in the earlier slide, the material recovery facility that we have set up in collaboration with South Delhi Municipal Corporation in the city of Delhi itself. Here we have also, in addition to the waste processing area, we've also provided different toilet and changing rooms for the men and the women. But we've also provided creches and conference rooms, which we have equipped with recycled plastic waste furniture, which is a kind of a very unique initiative at this facility. Typically, the material recovery facility that we're establishing would be about 5 tons capacity, working on a single shift basis. When we talk about partnerships, at the very least, UNDP is very uniquely positioned, and therefore we have partnerships at the city level. As I mentioned earlier, our partnership at the city level starts with the urban local body at the city level. and the state pollution control boards, which are the regulatory, which have the role of regulatory oversight. We also work with other stakeholders, which could be even recyclers in that region. We also partner with state urban development departments, because sometimes the urban development department, seeing our work, subsequently supports us with getting support from the urban local bodies at the city level. But I think very significantly, we are also being able to carry the learnings from our work on the ground and informing government agencies at the central level. So we are partnering with the Niti Aayog, which is the Government of India's premier policy think tank. We have developed a handbook on sustainable plastic waste management, and we are currently in the process of conducting regional workshops in collaboration with Niti Aayog, where we bring on board several stakeholders, whether it is government regulatory stakeholders, whether it is urban local bodies, whether it is recyclers, implementation partners that are actually conducting, are operating the material recovery facilities. The idea is that these platforms provide us avenues for dialogue. And as was mentioned earlier, we're also able to share best practices in order to energize the ecosystem to adopt them and run with them. So those best practices are shared by the practitioners of the best practices. So these workshops have also worked very well for us. In addition, we have most recently signed an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, with the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs, which is the key line agency for waste management in India. And under this MOU, we are going to be expanding our work to additional cities and potentially even talk about digitization of these material recovery facilities. So now coming to social inclusion, which we think we are very excited about, because we think of this as fundamental, but also unique to our work. So we understand, and I think all of us do, that the waste picker has been the traditional underpinning agency that has enabled waste management in the country. And when we go forward and we strengthen the ecosystem for waste management and circular economy, we work with the vision that we must we cannot and we must not leave behind the waste picker, and we must in fact integrate them into a more formal waste management, or rather I would say value chain, so that they can continue and to contribute to it, but also get further empowered in the process. So UNDP conducted Project Uthan. This happened last year. And in this Project Uthan, it was our initiative, it was our COVID response initiative, and with the focus that we will work with the waste pickers. So this Project Uthan covered 9,000 waste pickers across 15 cities directly, but there were indirect beneficiaries in terms of families of waste pickers, etc., which went up to almost 45,000. The Project Uthan, under this project, we conducted the first of its kind socio-economic baseline study of the condition of waste pickers, basically to get some insights into what really is their status with respect to their economic empowerment, whether the health empowerment, education empowerment. And the insights from these studies have been absolutely very interesting. So if I could share, like in one case, we found that while 90% of our waste pickers had Aadhaar card, which is a kind of government mandated identity card, but only 30% of them were able to have bank accounts. So this walk between an Aadhaar card and a bank account, still that walk needed to be enabled and strengthened for this disempowered community. Now, basis this understanding from these insights that have emerged from Project Uthan, we now are undertaking the second phase of the project, where we want to, basis this learning, help these Safai Sathis and get them those social linkages, which are, I would say, in some ways their due. The Uthan study was launched at an event which was attended by the CEO of Niti Aayog, by the Ambassador of Japan, and by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment, our UNEP colleagues, of course, our resident representative, Ms. Shoko Noda, and also by HUL, Hindustan Unilever Limited, with whom we intend to do the second phase of the study. of the project, I would say. So just a few snapshots of our social inclusion work. They're happening in different forms across our cities. So in one case, a waste picker is sharing that she got a universal pass for local trains. So now this is an economic empowerment tool for a waste picker. In another case, a differently abled waste picker was enabled to join has been working with us, and she has also been connected to the social welfare department, which has allowed her to get this tricycle, which allows her greater mobility. In another case, this waste picker has shared that she has got access to the old age pension scheme. Again, these things are available for the communities to benefit from, but for some reason, these linkages have not yet been fructified. In another case, this waste picker was able to open a bank account and therefore get mainstreamed into the financial system and therefore get financially empowered. Apart from our social inclusion work, we also work on outreach because we understand that in order to strengthen the plastic waste value chain, we need to also work with communities so that we can get more responsible behavior, consumption behavior amongst the communities, amongst the bulk waste generators, so that the quality of waste that is landing at the material recovery facilities is segregated at source, therefore of better quality, and therefore in a position to demand a greater value in the market. And therefore, in some ways, we are trying to strengthen I would say, the economics of the waste value chain. So we've conducted various activities. I don't think there is enough time to share those with you, but there have been like different campaigns in schools, at the community level, etc. I mean, there is a slew of campaigns that we carried out across our cities. In innovation and digitization, as you can see, this is a snapshot of the recycled plastic furniture that we have installed at our facility. There are some wall pieces also using recycled furniture. In a city, Panjim, Goa, we have started with a 16-way segregation program. In another city, we are including third gender waste pickers into our facilities. Of course, the art installation that I talked about at the facility in Delhi. Just again to reiterate, UNDP's work on plastic waste management directly impacts 14 out of the 17 SDGs. I would go on to say that there is an indirect impact even on the remaining 3 SDGs. Particularly with respect to public-private partnership, just some concluding thoughts. So based on our experience, I would say UNDP is actually uniquely positioned to enable public-private partnerships. Part of the reason is because UNDP enjoys a good, I would say, a good understanding with the government of India, but at the same time, even private donors would be comfortable engaging with UNDP. So UNDP comes at the center of this public-private partnership, at least in the plastic waste management program, basis our experience. There is sufficient, I mean, I would say quite a lot of fund available for plastic waste management. We are seeing it flow through the ESG framework, through the CSR framework, and most recently through the APR framework. However, whenever we talk about funding through a private partner or working with implementation partners on the ground, we've also observed that managing expectations of a private partner needs to be done upfront and throughout the conduct of the project. So that is something that we are mindful of, and there are times when it throws up challenges for us. If you look at an implementation partner, so the material recovery facility, we operate by engaging an implementation partner. That implementation partner, to a large extent, is CSOs or NGOs. In some cases, we've also had an experience of working with private entities. We work with them to build their capacity, to support them, especially with the CSOs and NGOs, in supporting their linkages whether it is to the government or their linkages to the recycler community or recycler agencies, I would say. So this is where I think this is an area that requires attention, and in order to strengthen the PPP model for waste management. Our work and our partnership with the government agencies, the government is seeing value in it because they're seeing this as an important, they see UNDP as an important partner to enable them to meet their regulatory mandate. In that sense, as I had mentioned earlier, UNDP is very well positioned at the center, to be at the center of this whole conversation in India. And we have leveraged our work to leverage existing as well as creating new platforms going forward for strengthening public-private partnership. So as I said, that in our Niti Aayog partnership, we are enabling creation of these platforms which are bringing together various diverse stakeholders to talk to each other in an environment of trust, and there can be sharing of good practices, of challenges, so that each of our partners or each of the stakeholders can walk away from these platforms feeling more empowered to take this work ahead. So that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Saloni, particularly on your work with the informal sector and the dimension on social inclusion and all your advice on devising public-private partnerships in the context of India. Thank you. We'll go now to the last presentation that will give another example from the Asia region from Mr. Troy Tian, who is investment manager at China Everbright International. And he will present lessons learned in the implementation of PPPs for waste management projects. He has in his work a focus on Central Eastern European and Southeast Asia region in the area of municipal solid waste management. And he has worked in the past, for example, on ethanol production using agricultural waste. So quite a broad experience. Please, Mr. Tian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Garnon. And let me just quickly share my screen with you.
Good, we can hear you and we see the screen.
Okay, thank you. Just one moment. All right. Okay, thank you, panelists and Mr. Goran. My name is Troy Tian, and it is my pleasure to participate in this UNDP discussion about the approach towards zero waste. And today, my topic is a case study of the development of a WT project in Vietnam by China Everbright Environment. First, if I may, please allow me to take a few minutes to introduce the company that I represent. China Everbright Environment is a Hong Kong-listed company. We are the largest company based in mainland China in the sector of environmental service. We are also one of the largest, if not the largest, the waste energy developer and operator in the world. The business of the company have different eight different sectors and covering almost the entire environmental service. And one of our core business is what we call the environmental energy, is to provide a solution in the solid waste management, particularly in the municipal solid waste management, using the waste energy technology. Within this sector, we are capable of providing a full chain service covering almost every aspect of the value chain in WTE, starting from the upfront financing to the construction, design and engineering, and to the downstream operation and maintenance. In addition, we also have a dedicated business unit that we do R&D research, R&D activities, and also even manufacturing of some of the core equipment that used in the industry, for example, the incinerators. Here is the landscape of a business. At a glance, you can see we're pretty large in China. We are present in almost every province of China. And outside mainland China, we have 4 international development it all started in back to 2010-ish by acquiring a small, but we believe is a very successful photovoltaic project based in Schönwalde in Germany. And shortly after that, in 2016, we first developed the very first greenfield WT project outside China. This is based in Canton city of Vietnam, which will be today's the case study in my presentation. So we'll come back to this topic later. And also in the same year, we acquired a medium-sized one of the leading waste management company in Poland, is Novago. So this one, different from using the WT technologies. This company we acquired using a more popular, widely adopted technology in Europe to tackle the waste management challenge. That is the MPT, the mechanical and biological treatment. The last but not the least, the most recent ones from last year, 2021, we also won a O&M contractor to provide the service to one of the waste treatment plant in Mauritius. This is not from our environmental energy sectors, but from our waste treatment business. Okay, so here the slide have some big figures just to corroborate the bold statement that I made earlier, that the China Everbright environment is being one of the top developer in the industry of WT. As of today, we have successfully developed more than 150 WT projects and capable of processing more than 110 tons of waste per day. So we are pretty proud of ourselves for what we have achieved today. Okay, sorry, I just clicked out of my presentation. Give me 1 more minute. Okay, so next slide. Here are some of the exemplary WT project we have developed for the company. So this one is based in one of the city in China. It's pretty interesting, not because it has the largest capacity or it has the most sophisticated technology. It is here because it is situated in one of the busy residential area of a metropolis of China that boasting more than 1 million population. So this is not even common in a country as populous as in China. This project sets a very good example that the WTE technology can coexist well with the local communities. Of course, we also have a few ambitious development in our pipeline, and this one is actually an upgrade of a existing WT plant based in another major city of China. We are aiming to further expand the existing capacity, which is big enough, which is 3,500 tons per day, to even bigger, to almost 70,000 tons per day, just to satisfy the increasing demand of the waste processing for the city. And another one is a greenfield project we hope to provide for a new urban district under development of Chinese government. So on top of that, providing the WT plan, we're also aiming to provide the solution to treat different kinds of waste, including the kitchen waste, the medical waste. So our goal here is to provide integrated solution for this for the waste management for this area. So on top of that, we also will adopt a very different design that from our past development in China. We aiming to have an underground design for the waste management facility in order to minimize the visual impact the facility might have for the local neighborhood and the environment. Okay, here is just the list of the award and achievement we have won in past. It's a pretty long list. I'm not going to go through that. I think at this point, you probably have an idea of what we do here at the China Everbright environment. So let's move to the main subject of today's discussion, which is to share our experience in developing a WT plant in the city of Canton of Vietnam. Apologize probably about the pronunciation. I'm pretty sure that's not how it's pronounced, but I will try my best. So for the beautiful city of Canto in Vietnam, this project has a facility of 400 tons per day. It is also able to provide 7.5 megawatts of energy of power to from the plant. After it has been built, it is able to process almost close to 70% of the waste produced by the Canton city. So this project is developed under a very typical PPP scheme, where the public and private parties have well-defined responsibilities. The public party, in this case, are responsible for main two parts. First, to provide the land to the developer, and second, to provide the revenue to the developer. Here, the land was provided by the counties called Thai Lai to the developer with the condition very favorable. So the land's cost will be very affordable to the developer. And the revenue is divided into two parts. The first one is from the waste stream. So the Canton city supplies the waste to the developer and pays the developer for the waste it receives and processes. And from processing the waste, the plant then produces the energy, which is then sold to the power company, which is state-owned. And the energy price it's sold also have subsidies from the Vietnamese government. So what is the job of the private party here? So private party in this case is us. We are provides the fund and also arrange the financing for this project. We are responsible for engineering, design, and construction of the plant. And after it has been built, we are also responsible for operating the plant and to provide to process the waste and produce energy from plants. And of course, we receive the revenue based on the service provided to the plants. So this PPP scheme highly resemble a business model that is widely used in China mainland. It's what we call BOT, or build, operate, and transfer. This model has been proving working pretty well for the Canton city. So here are some of the major milestones during the implementation of this project. I'd like to maybe just highlight a few. The first one is to obtain the license, just give the developer the rights to develop this project for the public party. And then during the process, it will be very helpful for the public and private party to work together on the EIA report, as well as this feasibility study. And among various agreements that will be entered between the public and the private party, I think the two most important one in terms of for the private party would be this waste processing agreement, and of course the PPA, the power purchase agreement. We gave the public party a very ambitious implementation schedule, and we are proud that we actually delivered. As you can see, during the implementation, from the groundbreaking to the completion of the project, it took a little more than 1 year. So I would say this is a pretty expressive schedule that relies on efficient organizing and coordination of the works. So here is just the process diagram of this technology used in this Canto project. It's pretty typical WT technology. The waste comes in here and stored in bunkers for a few days, and then it's go through this moving grate technology, where the waste are thermally treated. So during the process, the mass and volume of the waste are massively reduced and recovers the energy from this thermal conversion. And after the process, the residual waste will go through a series of the treatment so that it can be safely discharged to the environment, either to the atmosphere or as a form of the bottom ash. The equipment, the technologies we used in this Kanto project is developed in-house. And this core equipment, the incinerators, are designed and produced in China and exported to the Canton city. When we design and implement the project, we have the environmental safety issue in mind. So we stick to the highest standard of the environmental emission. So Kanto project, the emission of the Kanto project complies and even best, not only just the local emission standard used in Vietnam, but also one of the most stringent standards used in the world, which is from Europe. As you can demonstrate it by the actual emission data that we released to the public. So like the waste that we process in China and probably most other developing countries, the waste in Kanto that has a high moisture content. So during that process, the treatment will produce a high volume of the highly polluted wastewater. So they need to be treated. So when we design this plan, we have a dedicated wastewater treatment unit that will process water so that can be safely reused within the plant and without being discharged to the environment. And the bottom ash and the fly ash, they will just go through various process of the stabilization and the recovery process so that it can be safely disposed to a third party. So those technologies used here are pretty standard and pretty matured and has wide applications both in China and other parts of the world. Since the plan has been operated, we have made quite a contribution to the local communities and the city. So of course, we will continue to commit to that. So in summary, I believe this Kanto project just as another example and a proof that the PPP scheme would be a very good business model for development of the public environment infrastructures. So during that partnership, the public interest can be served using within a cost-efficient manner, and the public object can be achieved in a shorter period of time with the help of the private capital, and in the same time, they can award the private party with a very stable business environment and reasonable returns. So that will be bring to the end of my presentation, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Troy, for this comprehensive presentation, giving the practical example on the private sector's involvement in public-private partnership and what you can achieve. Thank you so much. That concludes our series of presentations. There is one recorded presentation that is touching more particularly on the carbon market and carbon financing related to waste management, and we will make that one, because it's recorded, we'll make it available on the SparkBlue platform. This is by our colleague Alexandra Sodzer, who has long-term experience in this carbon financing.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Alexandra Sodzer, Carbon Technical Advisor with the Nature, Climate and Energy team based in New York. Thank you for the invitation and for the opportunity to present an innovative integrated waste composting project in Ghana, which is realized through carbon finance. Ghana's updated nationally determined contribution, or NDC, include a specific conditional mitigation commitment to adopt alternative urban solid waste management. Composting is one of the conditional waste sector mitigation measures in Ghana's NDC, which means that the measure requires international financial support to be implemented. That is why the company Aerocorp, through the Ministry of Environment in Ghana and UNDP, proposes to develop and operate a sorting, material recovery and composting plant as carbon finance program. Sanitation in most regional cities in Ghana exemplifies the problems of a dysfunctional waste management system. 12 selected districts in 3 regions with a population of 1.2 million produce 1,100 tons of municipal solid waste per day. While 90% of the waste is potentially reusable, only 10% is actually recycled and composted today. The rest is tipped and hundreds of illegal dump sites or left next to houses or burned. The official dump site, and even more so the illegal ones, are operated in an unplanned and highly unsanitary way. As a result, poorly managed and not properly disposed solid waste pollutes the air, the water and soil, and causes significant health and environmental problems. The innovative carbon finance program will promote improved urban solid waste management through composting and create a sustainable market for environmental friendly fertilizers. It will transition Ghana's waste sector from a disposal driven one to one of enhanced composting and recycling. And this will have numerous positive impacts. The carbon program is fully aligned with Ghana's NDC and sectoral plans, policies and strategies, such as the National Solid Waste Management Strategy for Ghana and the Environmental Sanitation Policy. However, Ghana's draft policy framework on cooperative approaches under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement includes a pre-selected list of technologies that are considered additional to the NDC and eligible for carbon finance. Under this framework, waste handling, including composting of organic waste, are deemed automatically approved. The pre-selected list of projects and programs signals that composting of organic waste is outside national measures to achieve its conditional NDC targets during 2021 to 2030 and cannot be implemented without financial support. On November 23, 2020, the governments of Ghana and Switzerland signed a bilateral agreement on cooperative approaches under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement. The bilateral agreement sets the framework conditions for a bilateral carbon finance cooperation. And this new partnership enables the adoption of green and low carbon technology solutions across the country, resulting in several social and environmental benefits. The partnership will catalyze private sector investment into Ghana's NDC and open the doors to commercial projects and empower national businesses to drive climate action. One of the key objectives of this bilateral agreement is to increase sustainable municipal solid waste management. The current barriers to systematic composting of organic waste is the lack of reliable sorting, the lack of fully developed market for organic waste, and the lack of enforced offloading fees, so that the majority of the revenues have to be generated from sales of compost. Until composting is an established solid waste management practice in Ghana, only financial incentives such as carbon revenues can make composting facilities financially really sustainable. However, once sufficient awareness of farmers about organic waste and demand for quality, clean compost increases, composting will become self-sustaining through sufficiently priced composting fees in combination with the sale of compost, and will generate sufficient income to expand these waste management services to other areas of Ghana. The company Aerocorp is a waste management company registered in Ghana and is part of the Yospong group of companies. It is a leading waste management service company in West Africa. Aerocorp aims to improve the waste management in the Western region, the Volta region, and the Savannah region. And it will construct and operate municipal solid waste sorting, recovery, and composting plants. The project is implemented as a public-private partnership, and the ITMO program, or the carbon program, will enable Aerocorp to process 1,400 tons of waste daily. Aerocorp is expected to receive the waste from designated collection companies and treat the organic waste into compost, recover the plastics, metals, papers, and so on for sale. It will involve the business of collecting, transporting, and treatment of waste, and the development of high-quality compost, and will then be used by farmers, landscapes, and so on. The produced compost will be graded according to national standards, and the separated non-organic material will be sent to recycling industries, and the non-recyclable materials will be sent to a landfill or dump site. Under the project, 3 new composting plants will be built across the country in the regions that I mentioned earlier. Aerocorp will use state-of-the-art technology. The company is well equipped with modern waste collection vehicles, sweepers, and heavy earth moving machines for the operation and maintenance of the facilities. Aerocorp will apply the biosolids windrow composting technology. It will avoid the production of methane from the biomass fraction of municipal waste that would have otherwise been left for anaerobic decay in a solid waste disposal site without methane capture or flaring or power production. The decay is prevented through aerobic treatment by composting the organic waste fraction and proper soil application of the compost. The composting process is secured by well-established compost handling procedures and measures, including active aeration. And the compost product is used as organic fertilizer to reduce nitrogen-based fertilizers on agricultural fields, among other uses. Until composting is seen as a fully viable solid waste management practice in Ghana, only financial incentives such as carbon revenues can make composting facilities financially sustainable. And through the bilateral agreement with Switzerland, Ghana can engage in cooperative approaches under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement and sell internationally transferred mitigation outcomes, or ITMOs. And these ITMOs will subsidize the sale of compost. The ITMO program will contribute to the mitigation outcomes by enabling a positive financial return of the investment of Aerocorp. And the revenues from the sale of the ITMOs to Switzerland will improve the overall cash flow of the company and reduce loan repayment risks and also the loan payback period. The Aerocorp targets urban and poor rural farmers that do not possess sufficient funds to purchase the compost at full market prices. Aerocorp is the owner of the mitigation activity, and the activity is sponsored by the Ministry of Environment, Science, Technology and Innovation, MESTI. The Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, under MESTI is responsible for the coordination of the integrated waste program in Ghana and for ITMO reporting to UNFCCC. The implementation of the program will be monitored by EPA. Guidance will also be provided by EPA to Aerocorp regarding rules and procedures for monitoring and reporting. And the EPA will manage the overall reporting system for the ITMO program. UNDP will oversee the program, and it is implemented really in close coordination with the EPA and with Aerocorp. MESTI will ensure that the ITMO program achieves synergies with any waste and environmental policies on new alternative and sustainable urban solid waste management. And Aerocorp, through a public-private partnership with the EPA, will play the central role in the execution of the program and will track also the composting volume and composting of waste and report the implementation rate of the project on an annual basis. Since the ITMO generation is happening at the composting facility by Aerocorp, the legal ownership of the ITMOs generated by the activities lies with Aerocorp, but the ownership will have to be transferred by Aerocorp to the EPA with the acceptance of Aerocorp to participate in the ITMO program, and thereby benefiting from the financial incentives which will be provided upon third-party verification. The baseline of the ITMO program is the hypothetical scenario that describes what will happen in the absence of the proposed ITMO program. The ITMO program baseline scenario consists of two components, a greenhouse gas baseline and a sustainable development baseline. Since the targeted technical and financial incentives to stimulate the composting activities have not yet been implemented by the government of Ghana, the baseline scenario assumes the continuation of the current urban solid waste management practices and all the effects associated with that. And therefore, the baseline scenario assumes very limited coordinated and managed composting and the continued dumping of waste in formal and informal ways through landfilling. In particular, it also assumes a recycling rate below 10%. Baseline emissions include methane emissions produced in the formal and informal disposal sites in the absence of the ITMO program. And the program scenario, according to the methodology, is the controlled biological treatment of biomass or other organic matter through aerobic treatment by composting and proper soil application of the compost. The ITMO program's full crediting period will be 9 years from 2022 to 2030, and the expected start date is Q4 of 2022, with a full rollout in 2023. The program will generate emission reductions throughout the 9 years of the crediting period. The ITMO program will also undergo a UNDP SDG impact assessment through the Climate Action Impact or KITE tool. The assessment under the KITE tool requires a thorough screening for potential negative impacts before assessing the program's positive impacts. The section social and environmental risk screening is fully compliant with UNDP social and environmental screening procedures. The impact and probability of an event occurring will need to be graded from 1 to 5, and with 1 being low, for example, low level of impact or low probability of event occurring, and with the level of significance automatically calculated. And only those indicators that are defined as significantly high will need to be provided with additional information on a proposed risk mitigation approach. The following 3 SDG targets will be quantified and will be monitored during project implementation. SDG 4, the ITMO program will create new income generating activities for women in the waste value chain. Then SDG 11, the ITMO program will increase composting of urban solid waste and thereby improving air quality and municipal waste management. And SDG 16, the ITMO program will directly contribute to the NDC objectives and targets by supporting the creation of one fully operational public-private partnership on sustainable urban solid waste management. The program boundary are the 3 sites where the waste is treated. It includes the facilities for processing the waste, and but on-site electricity generation and consumption and on-site fuel use are excluded from the boundary of the project for simplifications. And the program boundary does not include facilities for waste collection, for waste sorting and transport to the project sites. And also not any wastewater treatment plants that might be on the landfill site. The MRV, so the monitoring and reporting of the ITMO program, is based on the CDM methodology AMS 3F, avoidance of methane emissions through composting, version 12. And independent plausibility checks during the program rollout will be documented by photos or videos and recorded to the EPA. And national MRV focal points in the government are responsible for the tracking of the progress and reporting to UNFCCC. This slide provides a summary of the emission reduction calculations and shows the baseline emissions, the project emissions, the achievable mitigation outcomes over the crediting period, and the revenues that can be generated through this project. The total mitigation outcome is 1.3 million tons of CO2 equivalent, and the total revenues are $17 million as financial incentives for Aerocorp to implement and operate the program over the 9-year implementation and crediting period. And the increased composting rate will provide new significant market opportunities for composting facilities and companies offering waste management services. Composting facilities traditionally have not had access to sufficient compostable materials, and the majority of the compostable materials are not separated at the moment. By increasing collection, also in lower income areas, and separating 90% of collected waste, the sustainability of the waste management value chain will be significantly increased and will lead to more raw materials being made available to the composting facilities, and beyond that also to recycling industries. This creates new business and employment opportunities. And in order to achieve this transformational impact, the financial incentives are considered really significantly, considered necessary to promote this change, and especially the new sustainable waste management practice. And it is expected that by the end of the program, the waste management company will operate a sustainable business model for waste management, and that the results can be replicated across Ghana to other areas, and that the waste sector in general becomes more resilient and economically sustainable. Thank you for your attention.
All the presenters to join us in that panel discussion, and we have 2 additional resource persons who will respond to us as first two questions. And I would like first to address the first question to Mr. Anton Sri Probiantono, who is Senior Program Manager at UNDP Indonesia and has extensive practical experience of project implementation at UNDP. Anton, could you share with us UNDP's work on supporting Indonesia in achieving the zero waste vision? And I think you have particular experience in the e-waste sector, and what you see from your angle, the key to success, in your opinion. Anton, please.
Yeah, thank you very much, Atiang, for your for the time that you shared with us, and also it was very interesting and very comprehensive that we can learn from other experiences, and also the vision of UNDP towards the zero waste in the future. Yeah, based on the experience that we have, that we have a huge increase of electronic waste as what happens in urban areas, like what we heard from other countries as well. And it happens along with the increased number of other kinds of solid waste. And the challenging situations that we have here is growing faster because the number of urban areas are also increasing along with the growth of the populations in Indonesia. The island of Java has been dealing with this kind of situations, and it is, if we compare to other islands in Indonesia, there are 144 million people live in Java, while Indonesia has 274 million people. So more than 50% live in Java. So based on the Ministry of Environment and Forestry's study, one person produces approximately like 0.67 kilograms of solid waste each day, or if we multiply by the number of populations, it will be 67 million tons annually. So out of the 67 million tons, it is estimated that 17% of it, or more than 11.5 million tons, are solid waste that contains plastic waste. And then out of the 11.5 million tons, there are 2 million of electronic waste that has been dumped by the Indonesians in 2021, where 56% of this number is actually in Java. So and it is worsened by a fact of the situations that COVID-19 pandemic. People tend to use more plastic for packagings in the e-commerce activities, and it has been creating another issue that we have to deal with. So based on the experience that we have been working in close coordination with the central government, especially the relevant ministries like the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also the local governments at the district and municipalities and private sector. We actually work together with the private sector and recycling industries, and also experts and local communities. So, and UNDP has been facilitating the development of circular economy concept and promoted to relevant stakeholders. And we have been working with the Ministry of Industry and relevant sectors and also experts to strengthen the capacity of Indonesia laboratories to identify chemical substances that potentially cause the adverse effects to the human health and environment, and also develop relevant regulatory frameworks and technical guidance. And we have been strengthening the capacity of Indonesian industries to identify persistent organic pollutants or persistent organic substances that have been regulated by the conventions, the Stockholm Conventions especially, and also to strengthen the Indonesian recyclers to adopt applicable techniques that are able to reduce the impacts of these POPs, UPOPs, and also persistent toxic substances. And in Indonesia, UNDP has been working with the Ministry of Industry and Ministry of Environment and Forestry, and also local governments to facilitate the development of these mini depot, what we call as the facilities to segregate various types of plastics from plastics that may potentially contain the persistent organic pollutants. And through this kind of activities that we work together with the local communities, we educated the local communities to turn the shredded plastics into materials that potentially have demand or market value. And we have facilitated these communities to collect their own waste and transform this kind of waste into more economic value and access potential buyers that have strong interest through the communications and coordinations that we have with these associations of the recycling industries and also other kinds of related industries. And we have transported this kind of e-waste that we found in the fields or we found in the local communities to transport it to the registered facilities, because the government of Indonesia only works with the registered transporters, and we need to have a license, or we need to make sure that they have the facilities to work on this e-waste. And by doing this kind of activities, the e-waste collections and dismantlings is actually conducted by these registered companies in coordination with the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry, because the only activities that they can work with is the registered industries. And if we look at the this kind of activities in the market, there are some prices that the communities can collect from this kind of activities. They can have these processing activities, and we can learn more about this kind of value in the market. In average, they can have like some certain amount of money from this kind of activities. For example, like 1,300 rupiah from each plastic that they have collected, and then they can sell it in the facilities through this segregations of activities in coordination with the plastic waste collectors and also plastic waste facilities. And we work together with the local communities to strengthen their waste collections and also shredded, and we educated the communities to on the potential products from the waste, and we also train them to produce some crafts from this plastic waste, and we have facilitated these communities to generate economic value from these plastic waste collections and also activities in these facilities. And we are connecting these productions, their products, to the markets, potential markets, and we are working with the other ladies or the communities, and we are strengthening the the gender equality at these activities to make sure that they have an access to this market. That's the experience that we can share with you, Etienne and colleagues.
Thank you so much, Anton, for the concrete presentation, particularly on the scheme that has been developed on plastic waste. One of our panelists has to leave because of another commitment. Let me just give him the floor for final remarks on what has been presented. Weine, do you want to say a few words? Maybe your impression, your feedback on what you've heard.
Thank you very much. I wanted to be very, very short because we are running out of time. And I think this is very interesting, but we have to recognize that we are talking about a very large scale transformation of the whole system. And we are not only facing a number of projects, but we need to go full scale. And I think one of the issues we didn't talk too much about is the responsibility of the producer and the product, because as of today, most of the products that are put on the market, they are not subject for reuse, for remake, or for not even for recycling. So we have a huge problem ahead, and we have to recognize that. So that, and of course, in the meantime, we have to clean up the rest. We have to clean up everything with the existing landfill, with the problem with the climate, with the methane gas, and so on. And in order to do that, we have to do planning. Planning is critical, but without implementation, planning has no value. And in order to make implementation, I think still we have to establish what I call the institutional infrastructure. Mainly these 4 pillars about responsibility, financial means, enforcement, and flow control. Without that, we cannot go further. But if we can implement that, it's a good chance we can go not only from studies, but also to action in reality. And that's what we are aiming for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Weine, for joining our webinar and for sharing this experience. And I will now move to another panelist, additional panelist, who has joined us just for this panel. Thank you very much. This is Mr. Xie Fei, who is Chief Technical Advisor of China Public-Private Partnership Center in the Ministry of Finance of China. Thank you very much. He has been a key person in establishing China PPP Center and also a key writer of a series of China PPP policies, including guidelines. And he also worked on advising UNSCAP on public-private partnerships. So really fitting the subject of this webinar. So maybe I would ask if you could describe your experience in PPP and also generally your advice to UNDP and developing countries hearing about the presentation. One of the questions actually in the chat was about the lack of economic viability of recycling operations. So maybe this is something that you can address in the context of this PPP. Thank you very much, Mr. Xie.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I'm happy to join this meaningful workshop. As to the key challenges, I think the previous speakers have mentioned. One is the increase of waste. The other is lack of fund and technology. So I would like to focus on the fund and the technology issues, and also to share the practices and experience in China. To overcome the financial and technical barriers of waste disposal, the Chinese government makes use of the advantages of PPP and has achieved good results. I appreciate Mr. Tian from Everbright Environment has already introduced some advantages of PPP in his presentation. Since 2014, there are 410 waste-related PPP projects in construction and operation phases, with about 23.5 billion US dollar, and PPP boosts and upgrades the waste treatment in China rapidly. In China, waste project is one of most suitable infrastructure projects to use PPP model. Comparatively, waste project is simpler. It has clear scope, mature engineering process, and predictable revenue. And since the payment of PPP project to the private sector is based upon its performance, so the private sector has incentive to improve its performance by using advanced technology and innovative technology and measurement expertise. For example, previously, incineration process was not accepted by many Chinese people due to one about the possible emission of dioxin and other pollutants and bad smell. Now the situation is changing. For example, an incineration project in Ningbo City utilized digital technology to control the temperature incinerator accurately to avoid dioxin and other pollutants, to make the whole workshops in a negative pressure and absorb the older substances to avoid bad smell in the air. Meanwhile, an environmental education museum is built up in the same building. Now, the project site becomes an attraction to children and students. As to how to make PPP function, I think the following three aspects are very important. Number one, the government support. Government should support to apply PPP model and make a fair, transparent, and stable PPP market. It is important to set up a sound PPP regulatory framework to guide the PPP market development. In the case of China, frankly speaking, we don't have PPP law yet, and the PPP regulation is being processed. However, some PPP policies issued by the State Council and line ministries, as well as the existing budget law and government procurement law and law on tenders and bids, and their implementation regulations support PPP development in China. Based upon the practices in the past year, I believe China's PPP regulation or PPP law will be more comprehensive. Second is PPP practice. As I know, PPP is widely accepted by developing countries, especially those in Asia and the Pacific regions. Yeah, as mentioned by the moderator, ASCAP has set up an infrastructure financing and the PPP network of Asia and the Pacific. It has more than 50 member states, and major of the member states are from Asia and the Pacific. And also UNDP, UNESCO, ADB, and the World Bank have made great efforts to promote PPP in the region. Most of the countries in the region have issued PPP laws or regulations and have set up their PPP units. Many of them have practiced the PPP projects. However, many of them have not practiced yet due to poor PPP capacity. In my view, it's worth to implement 1 or 2 pilot PPP projects for learning by doing to enhance their operational capability. So I suggest UNDP and other MDBs or other international organizations can help those countries implement some pilot projects. I also would like to emphasize that PPP is not a free lunch. The private sector requires reasonable returns from the investment. I think for the public side, the government should consider how to provide fiscal subsidy to the private sector, how to meet the requirement of the private sector. Yeah. The third is transparent procurement. China's experience shows that the more transparent procurement procedures, the more attractive to the private sectors. And the higher competition, the more competent the private sector can be selected, and the more possible the project succeeds. So I would like to encourage developing countries to carry out their procurement internationally so as to select a best private sector. Yeah, and also I am happy to know that UNDP has set up a clearinghouse on waste management about the best practice in the world. In Ms. Zhou Xiaofang's presentation, if needed, China would like to contribute our best practices or case studies to the clearinghouse. I would like to stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Xie, for your practical advice and based on your experience and recommendations. I liked your point about PPP not being a free lunch, and all the points that you have made also respond to some questions that were wondering, about the economic viability of recycling. So I think you have clearly highlighted the whole system that needs to be put in place on this cooperation between the public and private. So thank you so much. I have to mention that Ms. Saloni Goel had to leave also the panel due to another commitment, but there was a question to her on the EPR system that has been put in place in India. So you can consult, that's occasion for you to check. Actually on the Q&A, there are the responses, and she has provided her response in writing to this question, and we really thank her for her presentation of the India example. Maybe a last question to our panelists, and that is to Mr. Troy Tian, and there was a question in the Q&A panel that maybe you would like to respond to. I saw that you also responded to one in writing, and I think it's interesting to this question also about even waste to energy. Do you need some separation and sorting before that to work well? And there was a question also in Vietnam about the impact of the legislation. Thank you, Troy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Conan. Thank you, Mr. Conan. So the question about the how WT is fitting role, I think in the context of that when the circular economy is coming or has been practiced. So in my opinion, I think I just echo what the gentleman from Switzerland said. WT actually goes hand in hand with the circular economy that promote and practice to reduce and reuse and recycle waste. I think it is essential and complementary part of a sustainable circular economy and a simple solution to the waste management. Because even in the highest degree of recycling, they will have many unrecyclables, such as the mixed waste that is not separated at the source. So they are very costly to separate, and also some dirty materials that's such as the greasy food, wrappings and packagings, and some materials that cannot simply be reused or has been recycled too many times. So those are the non-recyclables also need a way to be disposed. So I think that's where when the WT can come in, they can divert those waste from being improperly disposed and actually can recover energy and materials from those non-recyclables. So I think WT has a very vital, important role even in the circular economy. So it's a solution to the waste management, whether in any circular economy or in a situation that when circular economy is yet to come and will come in pretty soon. So that's my answer to the questions for the gentleman that I heard from this Q&A chat panel.
Thank you very much, Troy. Very clear response. And explaining well this relation with the circular economy and still the role of waste to energy in this approach. So thank you so much. I think we can all, I see that actually all the questions have been responded to either in writing or directly by the panelists. And I also see that we are way over the time that allocated to the webinar. So I don't know if Xiaofang would like to say a few final words for our team, concluding words, and we will just close the webinar after this, just reminding you that there is a page about this webinar that is available on SparkBlue, that you can listen to the recording, see the presentation, also raise additional questions, and see actually one additional presentation that is talking about financing through the carbon finance, with an interesting example of a project being developed in Ghana at the moment. So Xiaofang, would you like to say a few concluding words, please?
Yes, thank you, Etienne. Just very quick that I would like to thank very much for those speakers, panelists, to share their insights and experience and practice in this regard. And we see this issue is quite complicated, and you know, it's no simple solution. It's kind of you know, you need a very systematic approach, and start from the planning and also consider the reality and many other you know, matters in context of the country, and have a short-term and mid-term and a long-term solution. And we even know that even Europe, those approach is kind of, even the landfill issue, they took 20 years, and the circular economy is just in the process. You know, we all know this is not an easy transition. And this is just one webinar of UNDP in this regard. We definitely will do more. And I want to let you know that in the coming months, there will be two important events UNDP will organize in the Stockholm 50 conference. That will be, one will be a very high level dialogue on plastic, how to finance, particularly from the finance part, and how to make the innovative financing about plastic waste. Another event will be the waste management. We will you know, have those side events during the meeting, you know, invite some mayors to share their views on this zero waste. So I really hope that all of you could, you know, follow those events. But most important, we really want to have some kind of, you know, direct communication with you, to listen to you, what's your demand and what's your challenge, and maybe you're already in the process, and how UNDP can help you, and how can we bring you, you know, partner from the world and expertise from the world to, you know, support you to achieve your targets, you know. this is kind of a journey, we can go together. Thank you very much. And I want to, have more opportunity to discuss with you. Over to you, Etienne. Maybe there is a very interesting, actually, the presentation about the carbon markets, because our purpose is trying to, this is a kind of, the burden for many cities and the government. We want to make it a journey to reduce the burden of the government by generate more revenue, generate more value, from this waste management, make it interesting or attractive, business. So that's carbon market presentation is one of those, ways you can, I think many developing countries should consider. So welcome to our Spark Blue to look at that presentation from my colleague. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And yes, I think that concludes the webinar. And I will just echo Xiaofang's call to, if you're interested in this final topic on the carbon market financing. Thank you so much for the wealth of experiences that were shared, the examples, concrete examples, and the excellent discussion. Thank you for the lively Q&A session. I think we can close and thank everyone for their participation and time and joining us today. On behalf of the Montreal Protocol Unit Chemicals and Waste, we thank you very much for joining us.